About 12 hours before the Hamas massacre of Israeli citizens in Israel last year, I had a powerful dream which seemed to foretell the terrible event before it happened. And this is one of many such premonitions and meditative visions which I've had over the years. And what does the possible existence of precognition mean for our understanding of not only time, but of the cosmos itself? In previous videos, I've already outlined a couple of my premonitory visionary experiences, such as in 2014 when I dreamed of the heart attack and death of author Stuart Wilde, 6 days before it happened. And an even more incredible experience 30 years ago when a meditation teacher of mine predicted the precise time of the appearance of UFOs, which I then personally witnessed on a clear winter's night in Australia. You can find the links to these videos in the description. More recently, and on the morning of October 7, 2023, I had a dream which startled me so much that I awoke and immediately recorded it on the Notes app on my iPhone, which is how I now keep my dream journal, something I've been doing for many decades. Now, if October 7 rings a bell, you may recall it was the day of the Hamas massacre of Israeli citizens, when militants stormed across the border from Gaza. I live in China, and my 12:25 a.m. dream, China time, occurred approximately 12 hours before the Hamas attack began. I'd now like to share that dream with you exactly as I recorded it. I have edited almost nothing except for the odd typo. So here, I read it now. I was kind of watching from the third-person perspective, but was also first-person at times, as if I was the experiencer. Suddenly I became aware of machine gun fire. The doors opened and I knew there was a massive terrorist attack coming. I could hear people being shot. I was kind of upstairs in maybe a 2 or 3-story building, like in an old western town or something, maybe Israel. I climbed out the window and up onto the roof, and I was trying to make no noise on the roof so I wouldn't be heard. But then I ran into another guy who was bald, and it seemed like he was one of my colleagues, like someone who is Jewish. I was kind of excited, but he told me that a lot of people had been killed, including relatives. There was a kind of rush of excitement, like a movie, or adrenaline. Perhaps a rather startling aspect of these dreams, which I have fairly regularly, is that even when they strongly correlate with events which mirror them closely and soon follow the dream, I often don't recall the dream, even after hearing the news or experiencing the event personally. In this case, I only found the dream about October 7 in my diary more than a month after the event in Israel, when looking back over some of my recent entries. I always put the date and precise time of the dream at the top of each journal entry, so I know exactly when the dreams occur. Similarly, I only recalled the Stuart Wilde death dream a few weeks after I heard of Stuart Wilde's death, again while checking old dream records. So when people tell me they don't have precognitive dreams, I tell them they probably have many, but they just don't remember them. My terrorist attack dream is fairly typical of precognitive dreams in that it's not a precise video reproduction of the events being foreseen, but combines the symbolic and the literal, but with major motives being clearly consistent with the real-life event. Building in the dream was fairly typical of the kinds of standalone houses in the kibbutz in Israel, and the surrounding scenery was flat, dry, and desert-like, which is why I wrote that it seemed to me to be in the arid US West or Israel. I sensed the Jewish heritage of my colleague from his dream appearance, kind of a stereotypically Jewish-looking person, and just the overall vibe of the man. It seemed to be the most obvious feature of his overall demeanor. I experienced a rather similar precognitive dream in the early hours of the morning of March 15, 2019, China time, where I dreamt I was walking on a path in the mountains above a coastal city, which I could see at a far distance to my left. Suddenly, a group of rather agitated people rushed past me, and from their attire I could see clearly that they were Muslims. I wrote in my journal that I was unsure whether they were running away from something dangerous or about to engage in some terrorist-like activity themselves. I looked down again to the coastal city on the plains below, and I saw smoke rising from it, as if a disaster had just occurred. A soft voice then said, 50 people dead. I then awoke, spooked, and recorded the dream in my journal, noticing that it felt like a genuine precognition. I then went back to sleep. Next morning, I recalled the dream clearly and went to check the news. That's when I read that 49 Muslims had just been massacred at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. Christchurch is a coastal city with the New Zealand Alps inland to the west, which seemed to be from where I was watching the events in the dream. One day later, one more of the injured died, bringing the total dead to 50. When I checked the times, I saw my dream was several hours before the attack in Christchurch.